You remember Lightning. She spent the majority of Final Fantasy XIII seeking to rescue her sister Sarah. Sadly, she's a bit player in Final Fantasy XIII-2. It's Sarah's turn in the spotlight now. Sarah's not as interesting as her sister, but that doesn't keep Final Fantasy XIII-2 from delivering a satisfying mix of heartfelt story and fun action. That isn't to say that Final Fantasy XIII-2 is as epic as you may have expected. The story isn't long as far as Final Fantasy games go, maybe 25 hours, though there are reasons to linger. But those 25 hours sometimes drag, like during a boring platforming section that weighs things down just when they should be picking up. The upside, a less linear adventure than the last one. The downside, a lot of unnecessary padding. If that sounds like a lot of negativity, don't worry. Final Fantasy XIII-2 is still a very good RPG. You could say the same thing about Sarah. She's a good, not great, leading lady. Her purpose is to find Lightning, who everyone assumes to be gone for good.
You're full of it!
Yeah, that's impossible!
But Sarah knows Lightning must be alive, and of course, she's right. Lightning resides in Valhalla, a realm that exists outside of the constraints of time.
Beyond life and death.
Lightning is locked in struggle with a man called Caius. Caius speaks with a quiet confidence that makes him a really compelling villain. He's driven by sorrow, and as you get to know his story, your empathy grows. He isn't inherently evil, thus making him a much more interesting villain than the usual frothing maniac.
It could travel back in time and rebuild itself.
The game's two main characters, Sarah and Noel, aren't nearly as interesting as Caius and Lightning.
We have to?
Noel's from the future, and during the opening sequence, he arrives in Valhalla where he sees Lightning and Caius clash.
Gonna get worse.
But Lightning sends him back in time and to Sarah's side, so he and Sarah go on a time-traveling adventure. The two make a blandly pleasant team, but there isn't a lot of tension between them, which diminishes the drama a bit during the first half. And when you are reunited with characters from the first game, those moments are oddly lacking in emotion.
You really don't know when to quit.
On the other hand, the game's second half features an extended sequence that combines gameplay and narrative in some powerful ways. You won't mind Sarah and Noel, at least. Other side characters like Hope and Snow are perfectly fine too. In fact, Hope is a much stronger presence this time around. Hope's assistant Alyssa, on the other hand, is insufferable. And the shopkeeper Chocolina will have you wishing you had earplugs every time she opens her mouth.
Anyway, back to business. Open up that wallet and shower me with Gil.
Inconsistent voice acting aside, Final Fantasy XIII-2's production values are impressive. The environments are visually diverse and combat still looks really flashy. Occasional frame rate dips do prove distracting from time to time, though. Final Fantasy XIII-2 does its best to address the issue of linearity that irked 13's players. Rather than follow a narrow path towards your eventual goal, you do have room to breathe. Many areas are still collections of constricted paths, but in certain regions you can venture off on your own and uncover the secrets waiting for you out there. Citizens may offer you tasks, though these are few and usually amount to a simple fetch or kill quest. The overall structure also invites non-linear exploration. Once you've unlocked a particular place and time, you can visit whenever you want. Aside from another padded fetch quest, such time hopping is usually optional, but returning to levels can have unexpected results. Try choosing different dialogue options or dealing with a giant boss in a slightly different way. You might be surprised by what happens. It might be less linear, but Final Fantasy XIII-2 is still remarkably similar to 13. Party members have combat roles associated with them. As you level up, you earn new roles to take on, and from there, you create combinations of roles called paradigms. When battle commences, you enter the battle arena, an action bar called the ATB gauge fills, and you queue up actions for your party leader. When the gauge is full, you unleash your skills, and you can switch to a different paradigm during battle. There's also an additional consideration this time. Some enemies can inflict blood wounds, reducing the maximum amount of health you can possess. In spite of this new element, combat is easier than it was before. There are far too many battles where you can just switch to an offensive paradigm and sleepwalk through. But all the flash and sparkle still makes combat fun. And when you do encounter a creature that tests your wits, it's nice to have the chance to keep your fingers and your brain busy. But monsters aren't always enemies. You see, there's a third-party slot, and that slot is reserved for monsters you capture on the battlefield. Whenever you defeat a monster, there's a chance it'll leave a crystal behind. Should it do so, you now have one such creature to call your own. Each monster has its own combat role assigned. One by one, you start to collect these monsters and assign them to your various paradigms. Collecting monsters has that whole catch-em-all vibe and gets pretty addicting. Monsters level up not using points, but with items you buy or earn during battle. You want to further improve your monsters, you can infuse them, sacrificing one monster in favor of granting bonuses to another. As for Sarah and Noel, there's a lot more flexibility in Final Fantasy XIII-2's leveling up matrix called the Crystarium. You gain levels really quickly, earn new roles quickly, and level them up quickly. By the time the story ends, you might fully level 3 different roles for each character, or maybe even 4. Despite Square addressing the linearity complaints from Final Fantasy XIII, this fix opened up a new problem. Without the tightly controlled pacing, there's an inconsistent flow to the adventure, and certain activities are so uninspired they often feel like padding. Yet, the monster collection and time-hopping freedom alone are enough to make it worth embarking on the enjoyable adventure of Final Fantasy XIII-2.